I'm Jack Scalia, and welcome to our show, Proud to Serve. I often get asked about my politics. It's simple. I'm an American. I stand for the national anthem. I believe in the red, white, and blue, mom's apple pie, God, guns, grits, our men and women in uniform who serve and protect our great nation, along with our first responders. But hey, that's me. Proud to Serve is about our guests, our people who have faced their fair share of trials and tribulations and have found a way to work through them by honoring their creation, trusting their instinct, believing in their dream, and creating their destiny. Our guest today is one of those people. He's kind of the secret agent kid that has grown into a man of principle and character. And he's going to tell us a very, very interesting story. John Braggiotti, welcome to the show, pal.
It is a pleasure, Jack, to be here with you.
Okay, so your parents were the precursor to the CIA.
That's right.
OSS, Office of Strategic Services.
That's right, the beginning of the CIA.
Right, and that was started by Wild Bill Donovan. So how did your parents, they just walk up to him and go, hey, you want to be in the OSS? Come on, join us.
You know, it's a little bit of both, a romantic story, and it's also an exciting story.
Right.
Because my father, as an immigrant from Italy, went to Boston, came out of Harvard, and coming out of school, the war was already going on.
Right.
So he had to make a decision.
Right.
So he had either, one of the armed forces, he felt he loved this country and he felt he wanted to serve. So he was going to join the Marine Corps. And in the restroom, on the way to sign up for the Marine Corps, this friend of his says, you know what, I just heard about this guy, Wild Bill, they call him, and he's starting this Office of Strategic Services. And why don't you check up on him? You speak all these languages, and my dad's name was Chad. He said, Chad, you speak all these languages, so why don't you check up on it?
Okay, so wait. He's going to join the Marine Corps. He bumps into someone, and now, who is his friend?
In the restroom.
Right, in the restroom, but who was his friend? Do you know who the friend was?
So his friend was one of his, they had graduated together from college.
Harvard.
And you know, they were all looking for jobs. I mean, this was a tough time, as we know. This is a lot tougher than a lot of guys people have it today. And so coming out of Harvard, he wanted to serve. He went into, he was thinking the Marine Corps because he knew the Marine Corps. And then he heard about this Office of Strategic Services, and he went over to meet with this guy, Wild Bill.
Right.
And Wild Bill accepted him and got to meet with him right there in his office. And he didn't really know a lot about this, but he said, look, you're going to serve your country, you're going to do something special. And this was the beginning of the CIA. And Dad was among the first 100 or so people that started the CIA. And
then known as OSS.
As OSS. And Wild Bill turns to him and says, listen, Chad, you realize a lot of guys that will not come back, and your name will not show up in the paper if you don't come back because it's a secret agency.
Right. And so what was his when your dad had to tell you some of these stories? I mean, I would think he did, right?
He did. He did. There's quite a few of them, and I can tell you that some of them are harsh, some of them are tough. He not only did he see a lot of bloodshed from the Nazis, but he also saw bloodshed that is very forgotten today, which is what the Soviets did to Eastern Europe. He was posted in Poland. Warsaw, Poland was just 90% destroyed. And he witnessed the Soviet troops taking down kids that were picking up food from broken down buildings and using them as target practice. So I know that's harsh, but that was what was going on during the war.
Yeah, during the war, a lot of things have been overlooked in history. But you know, we do know that the Russians Stalin was responsible for 20 million deaths.
That's right.
And they didn't take any prisoners, and a lot of whether it was man, woman, child, other things. And then Warsaw Ghetto, of course, was where the Nazis exterminated 90% of the Polish Jews that lived there. So tell us one of the stories, if you can, without killing me, about a story he told you that you found the most fascinating.
Sure. Well, one of the most fascinating stories, and there's been a few, but this one I think it will capture the audience's attention. I know there's a lot of armed services watching this. So he was in a building in Warsaw, Poland, and he heard this commotion in the streets, and he looked out, and of course, he was a secret agent, so he had to be very careful for not blowing his cover. And what he noticed was that these Soviet troops were going down the street, and they were killing people. They were killing kids openly. And he had just about had enough, and he had his 45, and he said, I'm going to go down there, and of course he would have been killed on sight. These guys had machine guns, and he's going to go down there with his 45. So as he's walking down the steps, he sees this Russian, what appeared to be a Russian general with a full uniform, and as he was pointing the gun to him, as he's walking down the broken down stairs and this dilapidated building in Warsaw, Poland, this Russian general speaks to him in perfect English and says, Chad, I know who you are. I'm your counterpart. I'm the British counterpart. I have a Russian general uniform, and I have a better chance of standing alive here than you do. You stay put and let me go do this. So he walked outside in the street. My father saw him going out there and yelling at these soldiers, these Soviet soldiers, and in Russian. And my father spoke fluent Russian, so he said, I said, well, what did he say to him? He said, well, you guys are going to get marshaled, and we're going to hang you for doing this. And he started yelling them and a lot of curse words. And sure enough, these Russian troops, these Soviet Union troops that were drunk, stopped what they were doing, and they were able to save a few lives that were there.
Oh my gosh. But there's so many different levels. That's fascinating about that. So he sees this Russian general, or someone that he appears to him to be a Russian general, and he turns out to be his British counterpart who knew who he was, but your dad didn't know who he was.
That's right. And the story gets even better because what happened is they became friends after the war. So they both survived, which was also tremendous achievement for a lot of Secret Service people that did not make it out of the war, both on the British side and the U.S. side. And they became very good friends and stayed their friendship until his friend died.
Wow. Okay, so now amazing.
That's one of the stories.
Yeah, just one. Right. Now you got a whole book. Yeah. Now your mom. Tell me about your mom getting involved in this.
So that's a little bit of a romantic story as well, because my father, coming out of the Office of Strategic Services, he thought he was going to be posted in Europe, and so he was dressing up to be posted in Europe, and they sent him over to the Caribbean. So he said, well, wait a minute, I thought I was going to go to Europe, and I had all this warm clothing. I said, you're not going to need all that stuff. You're probably just going to need some flip-flops and some shorts, because you're going to go track U-2 boats that the Germans are sending to Panama and potentially grab the Panama Canal. So that was his first post.
Right.
So when he was there, he had a cover, which is a diplomatic cover, and with that diplomatic cover, he had to attend certain events. So he was attending a diplomatic event where my mother was, and he saw this beauty across the room. He fell in love with her at sight, and he said that all the way till he died 10 years ago. He said he fell in love with her, and more importantly than just her beauty, it was her smarts. He started talking to her, and she knew all about what was going on in Europe, and he was incredulous. He said, how can this woman in Latin America know everything that's happening in Europe? Well, my mother had been posted with her father, which was also a diplomat, in Spain before the war.
Right.
So they knew what was going on as well. And as a matter of fact, she was there when the First World War the Civil War in Spain broke out, and left Spain. So they fell in love, and he wanted to marry her, but he knew that she had to become an OSS officer in order for them to get married.
Wow.
So at first she didn't want to.
Right.
And she refused him until he found out that she secretly found out that she had to be an OSS officer or become American and become an OSS. That's how tough the OSS was. They didn't want any secrets to get out.
That's right.
As opposed to the CIA today. So they got married, and then immediately after they got married, he turns to her and he goes, "Honey, we're not going to have a honeymoon. I'm posted in Europe, somewhere in Europe, and I can't tell you where, but I have to go out there." So he leaves her with his brother and sister-in-law in Connecticut, and he gets on a ship to go to Europe.
John, we're going to pause it right there for this show, but we're going to have you back so that they can hear the rest of the story.
It's great.
John, it's been a pleasure having you on.
It's a pleasure, Jack. Thank you very much, and thank you for serving.
Absolutely. You've been watching Proud to Serve. Stick around. Be right back. As always, God, family, country. Godspeed you all. Hi, I'm Jack Scalia, and welcome to our show, Proud to Serve. I often get asked about my politics. It's simple. I'm an American. I stand for the national anthem. I believe in the red, white, and blue, mom's apple pie, a dog named Spot, God, guns, grits, our men and women in uniform who serve and protect our great nation, as well as our first responders. But that's me. Proud to Serve is about our guests, people who have faced their fair share of trials and tribulations and have worked their way through them. By honoring their creation, trusting their instinct, believing in their dreams, and creating their destiny. And our guest today is one of those people. There's an expression, nicest guy in the industry, and I believe they were thinking of my pal, Tony Denison, when they coined that phrase. Now, most people know him as Lieutenant Flint from TNT hit series The Closer with Kyra Sedgwick, a role he has transitioned into the new series, Major Crimes with Mary McDonnell. But I know Tony as that guy who rolls up his sleeves for young kids with cancer through the Sunshine Kids. Anthony, it's a pleasure having you on the show, pal.
Thanks for having me, Jack.
The Sunshine Kids.
The Sunshine Kids, yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, it's an organization, it's G.W. Bailey, who's on Major Crimes with Mary and myself, which is, the show is no more now, but he had this, it's a charitable organization that takes kids who have cancer and brings them on basically a field trip to different places. Like they can go to Hawaii, they can go to the Colorado Springs, they go skiing or whatever, or they come to Hollywood and they do a Hollywood trip. They do Rockefeller Center in the winter, you name it, go to the White House, all kinds of stuff. And the kids get to go, and they get to go without their parents. Because if I had a child who had cancer, I know what I would be like. I'd be, take it easy, watch out, don't, just like my mother and father would be, take it easy, oh my God, what are you doing?
Don't let him eat that.
Yeah, take it easy, don't run. But, so they take these kids without their parents, and, the kids have a wonderful time. It's like a 10-day trip. Sadly, though, for some of the kids, it's the last thing they're ever going to do.
Right.
Some of the kids, the cancer just can't be beat, and that's it. And it's so funny because it touched me really. I went to the Mardi Gras. They do the Mardi Gras a lot, and it was the first time I had ever gone. And I went on the float for the Sunshine Kids, and there was a kid, and I didn't know he was one of the Sunshine Kids. I thought he was a brother to one of the Sunshine, because this kid had like, people in this industry. This kid could have been like a superstar. He was like. He had like 10 pounds of personality and just made everybody laugh, and he was teasing me as if he was the star of the show, And I just love this kid. And I remember about 6-7 months after the trip, I'd said to GW, I asked how he was doing, I said, how's this kid doing? And he goes, oh, well, he's gone. And I said, oh, he left the Sunshine. He goes, no, he's died. And I remember, like, I get a little emotional now, and it's like, he's gone. The kid, he goes, yeah, Tony, sometimes the kids who come in who are on prednisone, who may have swollen bodies or whatever, a lot of times those kids, they can make it. The ones who come in where you think, hey, that guy looks as right as rain, they cure the cancer in one spot of the body, and it goes to another spot, and it comes back like, bam, just takes them out.
You're telling me the story, and it's just getting me. So
I know. So like, that's why I said I'm so glad to have been a part of that. Right. I don't do as much because the show's no more, so it's hard to get everybody to get together again. But when we can, I donate money and stuff like that. Sure.
Well, let's go to your shows. You and I go back. We worked together a while back in the late '90s. In that with Jackie Collins.
Jackie
Collins and
Kim Delaney.
Kim Delaney was the
still
star.
A good friend.
Yeah. and a wonderful actress, a beautiful lady.
Yes.
And that's one of the blessings of the business. We meet people, you meet people, and we become friends, and you stay friends, we stick around somehow. When I say trials and tribulations, I remember there was a point. Now, you transitioned from the show with Kyra Cedric, who I would love to hear more. We'll share a little bit about her. When you were doing that series that ran for 7 years, then you transitioned your character into a new series,
Major Crimes. Yeah.
Major Crimes, for 6 years with Mary McDonald, working with two wonderful actresses. And did Mary, she won an Academy or was nominated for the Academy Award?
Nominated twice. Dances with Wolves and Passion Fish.
Unbelievable. Okay, but I want to go back to the part, because pursuing the dream, trusting your instinct, believing your dream, and creating your destiny. I remember after we did the Jackie Collins of the miniseries together, things didn't go great after that, because I remember...
That's an understatement.
Well, but I remember it had nothing to do with your talent or anyone else's talent. It's like things aligning. And so we were having a conversation, and I remember because I remember you having cats, and you were doing building things and stuff. And so from that point, and all of a sudden, what were you doing then? And you stayed with your dreams. You stayed with your believed in your
well,
instinct.
there's a lot to it. There's a lot. I mean, I'm 25 and a half years sober now, completely clean and sober.
God bless.
And thank you. And at that particular point in time that we're talking about, I was about 10 years sober. And when I got my big break, God bless her, Julie Bavasso, remember her? She recommended me to Bonnie Timmerman, and then Bonnie Timmerman to Michael Mann, and
Crime
boom.
Story.
And Michael Mann made this life happen for me by casting me in Crime Story. And I mean, it's like people used to say to me, when is it that you don't work?
Right.
You're always working. And I was like, working all the time. And then all of a sudden, boom. I mean, it just, like about 10 years sober, it just sort of came to an end. Not knowing it was coming to an end. I mean, it was literally nothing for, it was like a 4-year period of time where I used to joke and say I couldn't get a job if my mother was the casting agent, I mean, it was really, really, really bad. And I remember I said, I used to say, "What, God, what's the matter, God? I mean, I'm a nice guy. I sponsor people. I go to a lot of meetings. I answer phones in central office. I'm of service. I do this. Because unfortunately for me, I had turned my God, my higher power, into Santa Claus. It's like, I'm a good guy. Where's my gifts? Where's it's supposed to be Christmas today.
I'm getting charcoal.
Yeah, and then I started to really get into it. To this whole notion of a higher power and in my life, and I started to realize that the most important thing for me to be was happy with who I am, not what I am and what I have, and that started to work. And a lot of that had to do, we were talking before about my mom and dad. My parents, God rest their souls, they're both gone, Sicilian immigrants. Albeit they came when they were very, very young, but they were like blue-collar people. My dad was a truck driver. My mom was a seamstress. And they taught me a lot of things in my life. No matter how screwed up I got with the drugs and the gambling and all that nonsense back in the day, I didn't ever go hungry. Right. Because they taught me, go out, you got to go out and work. You got to bring home la busta, to the house. And
the envelope.
Yeah, the envelope, la busta. So anyway, I always worked. I always found a way to survive. And during that I thought about I actually used to say, what would my dad do right now? Yeah. And my dad would roll up his sleeves, and he would and so I started to do that, and my dad was like a genius in his own way. I mean, he could fix once he took a Gruen watch apart and reassembled it. With thousands of springs and wheels and stuff, and because he had it in the war, World War II, and it started working again, and it worked until the day he died.
Oh my gosh!
And but when it came to helping him with stuff, I could fix a car, I could fix a refrigerator, because I was the guy with the flashlight and the screwdriver.
Right. Here, hold this.
Anthony, give me Anthony, hold the flashlight. But when it came to carpentry, he didn't really need my help. I just had to come and hold the wood up as he nailed it or something. So I never really learned the carpentry thing. So during that period of time, I started figuring out, what am I going to do with this time I have? And I started learning carpentry. I got some books out.
Right.
And I started reading about, and then things came to me that, my dad, I guess,
Right.
my dad, measure twice, cut once.
That's right.
And sometimes when he'd work, he'd be like this, and then I started doing that. My tongue would be a little bit out of my mouth. And I'm telling you, and it's like, they were great people, and I realized that there's not anything that I couldn't do if I put my mind to it, and survival was key. And so for a 4-year period of time, granted, there were times I'd come home and I'd be screaming at the sky, the storm scene and
Yeah.
I'd be like, and then it would pass. But for the most part, I was getting happier and happier with me, with who I am.
You were feeding your soul, your spirit.
And my prayer all the time to my higher power, to my God, was just help me to be happy. That's all I want to be, is happy. I don't want to be some miserable guy walking around denigrating the business and other people who are working, and because I'm not.
Right.
And there's some reason for why this is going on. And then, little by little, it's like at the end of 4 years, one time I had a guy come up to me, and you know this guy, and I won't say who he is, but he came up to me and he said, "What are you on? You on drugs or something?" And I said, "No, I'm the opposite. I don't take any drugs at all." He goes, "Yeah, but how can you be so happy?" He goes, "I know what you're going through right now." He goes, and I said, "Well, because..."
I think I know who that guy is.
Yeah, I know you know who it is. So we worked with him.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I said, I'm just trying to get into being happy with who I am. I said, I can't be in AA and be like, AA is great and don't drink and keep coming back and all that stuff, because I got money in the bank.
Right.
I got to be the guy who does it even when he's struggling, because you know what? As much as I'm struggling, there's always somebody struggling so much more. There was
Amen.
a girl, her name was Mary. She had, I think, cerebral palsy. And she used to walk with the crutches into the meeting. And when you saw this woman at a meeting, and we got to be friendly, and I would see her sometimes, and she'd go, "Hey, Tony, how you doing?" With this big, giant smile. And it makes me cry now thinking about her. And I would look at her and I'd say, if this woman can stay sober and be happy, and her life is like this, and she was a really attractive woman, but she had this.
Right.
And I thought, are you kidding
Well,
me?
I'm complaining.
I'm complaining. So I just went through that period, and then, like in about the 5th year of it, things started to turn around. I started to get a few jobs. I got that series of the football show on ESPN, Playmakers.
Right.
And then there was another one, and then I backdoored my way into the closer. I mean, came on as a guest star, and then they made me a reoccurring, and then they made me a regular. And then I worked for the next 13 years on that show. But I constantly was just let me be happy. Just please help me to be happy. Please help me to be happy. And that's what I did. I mean, I lost my house. My wife and I split up. And she's a wonderful woman who just couldn't work it out. And she, she's going through Alzheimer's now. Poor girl. And anyway, but we that split up. And I was broke. I was 1 month away from complete bankruptcy. But I just got to sell the house, luckily, and in time to pay off what I needed to pay off. And then I said, okay, I'm starting all over again. And I was in my 50s, for God's sakes.
Right.
But I said, I'm going to do this, if I have to do construction, because it's how I paid my way through college, construction. If I have to do carpentry, I'll do it. I'll just tell you this real cute story. At one point, I was trying to figure out, how am I going to pay my bills with a construction company, landscaping, because I did brickwork and stonework and stuff like that. So I came up with this elaborate, I'm a Sicilian alcoholic actor, so of course I'm going to come up with a story. So I had a story. My story was, I decided I was going to help kids at Home Depot and give them jobs to empower them to become businessmen by doing this landscaping.
For you.
Yeah, but it was really for me. I mean, I was going to help them and teach them, but I was going to, so if people said, Tony, what are you doing that for? Oh, I'm helping these kids in the neighborhood. I mean, because I got my
apprentices.
I was hurt. I was embarrassed. Yeah, but I said, doesn't matter. I got to eat. I got to eat, and I don't want, like I said, I don't want to be a bellyacre.
Right. A quick story from mine.
Right.
When I was, and I'm digging ditches, and this is 12, 14 years ago. Okay, so I'm digging ditches, And I'm the guy where the boss comes to me and says, "Hey, stop working the kids want you to stop working so hard because you're embarrassing them." Yeah. I said, I only have one speed, okay? Yeah. And so now I'm digging in. The guy comes over. He goes, "Hey," he goes, "what's it like working with Bo Derek?" So I'm like, my ego went like this. Rip. I just slowed down a little bit after that because I knew they were going to come up with more. So I know the feeling. Yeah. So what's amazing, I mean, thank you for sharing that part of your life with us, Anthony. I know that you normally don't talk about it, but it's just for our viewing audience, it's just a wonderful thing to hear. And honoring your creation, what you talked about, and trusting your instinct and stick to itness, believing in your dreams, never giving up on it, and creating your destiny. And so, I mean, that's perfect. Now, okay, Syra Kedgwick, Mary McDonald. I mean, forces of nature as actresses or actors, as they say now. Mm-hmm. So, what the difference, or was there a dynamic? Did you see?
No, they both. Well, obviously they're two different entities, but both had tremendous work habits. Mm-hmm. Which is that's I'm old school when it comes to that stuff, and they're old school. Right. And it's like, and they always had like reams and reams of dialogue because they were the lead females in the show, and I was just so happy to work with them any chance I got, and I learned from everybody that I work with, but at the same time, even though my number might be number 2 or number 3 on the call sheet, or even in the closer it was even lower than that. I think it was number 5 on the call sheet in the closer, but on Major Crimes it was number 3. But I always say to people, I say, baseball is like, you being the ex-baseball guy, baseball is an analogy there's always an analogy I can use using baseball. And one of them is like in any scene, I look at it as the job is to score a run. Right. Okay? And my job might be to just lay down a bunt and move the guy over from first to second so that the next guy up, who might even be a guest star on the show, can hit the screaming double down the left field line and score the run. Sometimes I'm the guy on the base. Right. Sometimes I'm the guy, whatever it is. And sometimes I can sort of figure it out emotionally in the scene. Right. And I'm so happy to do the best I can. I mean, if I've got to be Phil Rizzuto in a game, what are you kidding? Phil Rizzuto?
Right. I
once was in the booth when he was broadcasting a game. They got me to go in the booth, and I couldn't sit still. I was in the booth with Phil Rizzuto.
At the scooter.
And he's talking to my mom and dad on the TV, and he goes, "Hey," he says, "John and Mary Serrero." He goes, I got your son over here. He plays a cold-blooded killer. It was a crime story. He looks like an altar boy. What, are you kidding me?
And how excited were they?
Oh, my mom and dad were over. I love those two people. And, we had our, we clashed,
Capatos, Testadoro.
Testadoro.
The hardheads.
Oh, me, yeah, for sure. And I miss them all the time. Yeah. But I know they're right here with me all the time, just like New York is with me all the time.
Harlem.
Right here. Harlem. And I know that I say this a lot, and I don't care how many times I say it. I'd like to believe that I have blue-collar values in a gold-collar profession. So that when I get there, I don't take anything for granted. I don't act like, when you come to a set, and I'm not saying this to brag about it, but when you come to a set, I'm the guy that's there, like talking with all the background people all the time, because I did some of that in New York, and it's like, who the hell am I? It's like, so I hang with them all the time. Like when I was doing Crime Story, I had a craft services guy once gave me an idea for a scene, and I was like, hey, that's pretty good. So I used it in the scene. I said, I'm going to improvise something. He said, all right. And they said, that's great. Where'd you get it from? I said, the guy at Craft Services. He told me, what?
Okay, wait. So you said blue collar, what, mentality?
Blue collar values.
Values.
In a gold collar profession.
I'm going to use that and make it mine. You know that.
Go right ahead.
Steal it, right? Okay.
Go right ahead.
I can't remember what it was, but when I remember, I'll use it.
It's true. It's like,
No, that's a great way to put it.
I just don't want to ever take it for granted.
Exactly. Well, coming from where you come from, Harlem, New York, your trials and tribulations, the things that the successes, the highs, the lows, the in between, the doing the carpentry and everything else, and the story that you're telling us. I mean, it all makes sense. You stuck to your values, your principles, your work ethics, and eventually, and a higher power.
Yeah, I mean, like you were talking before about, you know, like the first responders, you know, the cops and the firemen and stuff, and you know, it's like, when you look at their values, it's like, you just look at, like, when you look at 9/11 footage, which, you know, every year,
sure,
and you see all these poor people running, you know, crazily from the building, and the guys in the uniform are running crazily towards the building.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And you're thinking to yourself, wow. You know, and I don't care what anybody says. Your car breaks down in the middle of, you know, of Timbuktu, and all of a sudden you think, you know, your cell phone now, you know, you can't get a signal or whatever, and all of a sudden there's a bubble gum. And you go, oh my God, the cops are here! Thank God.
Exactly.
Thank God.
Look, Anthony.
So
I love your baseball analogy, because it's runs that win games. It's not always the home run, as you said. It's that bunt pushing the guy over the second. The guy gets the base hit up.
They don't talk about him in the paper the next day, but everybody at the game knows.
Everybody knows. That's right. So when you make those plays, but you're playing for the team, and that's a great concept. It's always about the team. Anthony, my friend, it's been a pleasure having you. Please come back and be on the show again.
Thank you. Anytime, Jack.
All right.
Anytime.
You can tell more stories. You can talk Italian. We'll talk food next time. We'll talk food.
Okay.
All right. We'll have Anthony back. He can give us some of his recipes and his secrets. I'm Jack Scalia. You're watching Proud to Serve. As always, God, family, country. Godspeed you all.